Jewish community worldwide is facing an increased number of anti-Semitic attacks. With the recent attack on Jewish students at DePaul University, Central Illinois is no longer an exception. We came today to Chabad at the U of I to talk to Jewish Illini about what measures they are taking to stay safe during these times. When staying in a hotel room, have you ever found yourself collecting those mini soap bottles? But starting summer 2025, it won't be possible. According to the new law signed by Governor J.B. Pritzker, all hotels in Illinois, including iconic Illini Union Hotel, will have to substitute mini soap bottles with refillable containers. Champaign County is experiencing a heat wave that rolled all across the Midwest, raising the temperature 10 degrees above the seasonal average. The campaign is organized by Urbana-Champaign Reproductive Justice, or UCRJ. They announced last week they're collecting money and period products for people affected by Hurricane Helene. One of the most needed essentials are period products, like tampons and period pads. Founder Julie Lott explains why they decided to help the victims that way.
Periods don't stop for disaster. So we wanted to be sure that people are also getting access to things like tampons and pads.
Illinois student organizations within College of Law and Medical Students for Choice also decided to help. They set up drop-off locations at the U of I Law Building and Lott's home in Urbana. After a week, they collected over $800 and 172 pounds of products. In addition to pads and tampons, Lott asked people to donate emergency contraception and pregnancy tests. Abortion is either banned completely or very early in pregnancy in many of the affected states, like Tennessee, Georgia, and South Carolina. The Medical Students for Choice CU founder Amik Bindra says this campaign becomes even more important considering this anti-abortion laws in the affected regions.
We see Hurricane Helene affecting a lot of states in the South that have certain laws that are more restrictive to women's rights and autonomy. So having a period product drive is so essential for these victims specifically because they're not very representative in the healthcare space.
Local organization Elevated Access volunteered pilots to fly the collected items to the regions affected by the storm. The first flight left today, but UCRJ and partners are still collecting money and products as Hurricane Milton approaches. Layli Nazarova, UI7 Live. While some ignore the race, no voters claim that withholding their vote for president is a political statement itself. One of these people is Chester Gia. He left the presidential question on his ballot blank as an act of protest.
I am protesting what this country stands for, what its political system stands for. Voting for a presidential candidate to me is like voting for my oppressor.
Illinois professor Dr. Brian Gaines says this is the first time there is a huge movement that encourages people not to vote.
It's not very uncommon at all for lots of people not to vote. It's a little more uncommon for there to be an active movement encouraging people not to vote.
Gia doesn't think his empty ballot will favor a certain candidate.
I don't believe the vote will change anything.
Dr. Gaines says the no-vote movement can influence the election outcome only if they concentrate their efforts in swing states.
If a lot of people do this in California or a lot of people do this in Idaho, it's not going to have any effect on anything. It's really just Pennsylvania and Michigan and Arizona and Nevada. That's a few states that we're always talking about.
Another option to show support for neither candidate is voting independent. And this can sway the election outcome by dragging the votes away from one of the major parties. If we look at two previous elections, independent votes significantly dropped from 5.2 to approximately 1.7%. Is it even possible to get to the 2020 level in this election? Dr. Gaines says it is hard to predict if we can expect independent voters to tip this year's election.
Surveys that list all the candidates tend to exaggerate the support for minor candidates. People who say, I'm planning to vote for a Green or for an independent, get in the booth and they think, I can't do it, I don't want to throw my vote away on a Green, I'm going to go with the Democrat or the Republican.
Many of no voters abstain only from voting for president but still cast their votes on local ballots. Layli Nazarova, UI7 Live. Some of the changes included prohibiting protests at iconic locations like Alma Mater. Others limited how loud protesters can be. Protest organizer Derek Briles says the new policies specifically target the constitutional right to free speech.
This is a direct and knowing attack on people's First Amendment rights.
Meanwhile, the university emphasized that some protests turned into vandalism. specifically referring to the word divest painted on the Follinger Auditorium pillars. Now the graffiti is covered with this Illini Pride orange and blue wrap, and this year incoming students might not even know what's hidden underneath. In the eyes of law, the line between vandalism and free speech is individual for each case. Law professor Michael Leroy says it is the manner of protesting that matters.
Once you get to paint, you have property damage, and there an institution has a clear right to prohibit that kind of expression. When it comes to chalk, the protester has a much wider right.
Leroy explains that the university has the authority to impose so-called TMP, time, manner, and place restrictions on expressive activities. University spokesperson Robin Kaler said in an email, those who choose to participate in civil disobedience should be prepared for the consequences of their actions. Briles argues that the punishments are too severe for the peaceful protesting.
There's at least, that we know of, 9 up to 11 people facing felony charges. The bare minimum, these people are facing a combined time of like 35 to 40 years in jail for a peaceful protest.
U of I is one of the many universities who imposed new expression regulations. I'm Layli Nazarova, UI7 Live. Danis ran against Republican candidate Ellen Anderson and won 54 to 46%, despite no support from his party or the county board.
What do you think about the proposal to hire auditors rather than elect them? He says that auditors perform this like watchdog role. Do you agree with this statement, and what do you think about this?
Thank you, Hannah. Auditor's race has definitely been really heated, not only because of the controversies surrounding the incumbent, but the fact that they led to a potential elimination of this role. It does not really mean that this role will be fully eliminated. It just means that auditor will be hired, not elected. The county board says it will help to keep the auditor accountable. George Danis refused to speak to us, but on his Facebook, he claims that eliminating auditor will lead to power abuse and less accountability for the county executive. I spoke with Republican candidate Ellen Anderson and discussed where he stands on this issue. However, Anderson mentioned that he supports the county's suggestion to create a new finance department and share some of the auditor's responsibilities with them. Another interesting change tied to this race is public safety tax raise. Both Danis and Anderson mentioned that $2 million the county lost in interest on ARPA money. Now, to make up for this loss, the county's public safety tax might double, changing from 25 to 50 cents for every $100 spent in Champaign County retail. But we will see how the story develops when the new auditor or the elimination decision is announced.